Um, it's lovely to have you here. I even got myself a cup of tea.
Oh, look at that.
I know you said you drink a lot of coffee, but we
You know,
gotta
tea, I drink tea all day, but just not at night. Not so much at night.
keep up the stereotypes, right?
Yes. Put your little finger out.
Right. It's English breakfast. I even grabbed the right tea. No, what do you drink actually?
Yeah, just normal tea. I mean, we just call it tea. So I guess it's like English breakfast, but PG tips. It's normally brand names. We just drink regular tea and drink it all day. So
Oh, wow.
nothing. I do like Earl Grey, but it's just a staple of the British life. So you just stick a bag in a mug and make some tea, and yeah, it's nothing particularly special. It's just what we do. It's how we keep ourselves alive.
Yeah, you're your
Yeah.
source of caffeine. I try to have 2 cups of coffee in the morning and then switch to tea, but I don't usually do caffeinated tea. I like rooibos. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, but I've not heard you speak about this gal, but she's my favorite, is Jane Austen.
Oh, is she?
And she's my very favorite. But in your book, you were talking about the people that you would bring back to have dinner with. And two of
Yes.
the people you have on the list are 100% mine, is C.S. Lewis and Maya Angelou. I'm like,
Yes, I
what?
know.
Yeah,
Let's chat with them. That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
it would be
No,
amazing. Yeah, both
yeah,
of
it was hard to pin down, like when I was really thinking about, but yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, who would I want to gather to
them.
talk with?
Mary
Yeah.
Oliver, I don't know her, but we could like have a
Mm.
temporary poetry tea time for homeschool moms if
Yeah. So, I mean, Mary Oliver was an American poet, and she only died. I mean, she died a few years ago. I'm trying to think when she died, but I absolutely adore her poetry. I'm just trying to think. I've got to grab some here, and I read it nearly every day. She was a prolific writer, and I'm also reading at the moment. I'm reading one of her prose. Um, no, it's not. I thought it was next to me, but it's not. Oh no, it is. It is. It is. Here we go. This is one of my favorite, and it's called Devotions, but it's not particularly religious, but she uses
yeah,
that word. And this is kind of like a best of. Like, this is, if you're gonna,
yeah,
I mean, try a few out on the internet first, see
yeah.
if you like it. She writes a lot about nature, like just tons. And then this book has a kind of compilation pulled from lots of different gatherings and smatterings of her poems. But yeah, I read them all the time. I just love her. And at the moment, I'm reading a prose book, which kind of reads like poetry. When poets write prose, you can't get it out of them. They're just like they
Yeah,
have to. Yeah.
I can tell you're a reader based on how you write, like how your prose yourself is really beautiful. And I really love
Thank you.
storyteller. Yeah, I really see
Thank you.
what you're saying. But you
Yeah,
quoted
that's
Brene
good.
Brown very quickly into the book, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I feel I've probably got like 10, 15 posts written about how homeschool moms can learn from Brene Brown.
Yeah, it's
Love
so
her.
true, isn't it? She's incredible. And I started reading her. I mean, I think I've read everything by her now. But I started with The Gifts of Imperfection, which is probably the most widely known one early on. And then I just, every time one came out, I was like, I'm a big fan. I'm gonna read your stuff. Yeah, so helpful.
That was huge for me in mindset shifting. I was actually, it's very much part of my story in my 3rd year when I was like ready to throw the towel in and be done with my very classically homeschooled approach. Everything Susan Wise Bauer, I was doing it for almost 4 years. Uh,
Right.
so we were all unhappy. It was very interesting stuff that we did, but it was really intense. And so
Yeah.
by the 3rd year, I was ready to throw the towel in. And someone who wasn't a homeschool mom had told me about this Brene Brown TEDx talk. And that was like truly shifting for me. And I don't know exactly what I was thinking because she's not a homeschooler, nothing about
No.
homeschooling.
What was it? What was it about her that what
Yeah,
brought the shift at that time?
it was my own personal development that I
Okay.
was aware that I was serving everyone around me and I was doing nothing for me. I was unaware of who I was. There was no authentic, maybe I was trying to serve and do everything for everybody else, but I wasn't
Yeah.
doing anything here.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that literally began my forays into learning. Really, it's about wellness or mindset and shifting things for me. So that was big. Yeah.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
I just, she's so helpful, and she's another one that I dip into regularly. I just pull a book off the shelf, and I'll look back at what I've underlined, what actually stood
Yeah.
out to me all those years ago. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
I love your book. Okay, how many times can I say that? But I really do. For anybody that isn't even a Charlotte Mason or even interested in Charlotte Mason, I'd say still read the book, because I think for me, having tried out all the philosophies, I think we go down these intentions toward becoming you fill in the blank homeschooler. So an unschooler, Charlotte Mason schooler, or Waldorf or Montessori or whatever. We want to become something instead of just focusing on the child in front of us. And also we're trying to adhere so closely to some philosophy that it doesn't serve us or our kids. And yet she's got a lot of really good stuff to say. So yeah, I mean, so many really solid things. When I'm going through a portion of your book, about, I think it was about kids or parenting, not the education part, but you were sharing about what she shares about children, and she's not even a parent, and yet she has incredible insights about kids. Clearly she's working with them all the time.
All the time. I mean, she started training to be a teacher when she was just out of childhood herself, which is crazy. So I think she was about 12 or 13 when she became an apprentice to a teacher in the local school she was in. So she was kind of learning and training, but yet she was working with children. So just barely still lingering in childhood herself. And she, and she took on this profession. It was probably because of her life situation and family situation. It was probably one of the few jobs that she would have been encouraged to do and could have progressed in, really. But aren't we glad that she did? I mean, so from the age of 12, 13, observing children, and then right through to her mid 40s when she started to publish the 6 volumes on education. I mean, that's some knowledge, that's some observations, that's a lot of paying attention to lots of children.
So you've read through all 6 volumes, and they're on your shelf somewhere. I'm impressed.
So this is, I've got another shelf with tons and tons of Charlotte Mason resources over there. But these, you can see here, these are my very original 6 volumes. I'll pull one off here.
Like original?
So original, not first edition. I have got some early edition. So I don't know if you can see right up at the top here, one of this one there. That's a copy of Parents and Children. It's not a first edition, but it's a very early one. Wow. And then next to it is this one here. This one is called The Story of Charlotte Mason. That's one of the biographies. I do have a first edition copy of that. So when early 2000s, when I started to research the Charlotte Mason philosophy, my mother-in-law for Christmas bought me this set, and all these 6 pink books came in a box. And for some reason I wrote my surname on volume 1, only volume 1. And what happened was, in those early few years, we just were on single income, quite a low single income, really trying to do our best, keeping everything together and being frugal. And I discovered the books were available online. You could read them via Kindle. And I bought this kind of big omnibus edition with all 6 in one, which I wouldn't recommend. It was terrible. So what I did was I had to sell books to buy books. And very early on, I sacrificed these 6 books. So here's the story, which is very cool. And I sold the set because I needed to buy books for my children. And I remember thinking, I'll replace them at some point. When I can, I'll replace them. Never imagining I would replace them with my actual copies.
Right.
So 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe like 3 weeks ago, I got this random message through Facebook Messenger, and I'm terrible on Facebook. I hardly ever check it unless it's for work stuff. And I had this random message from this lady saying, somebody I knew years ago who just said, hey, I'm no longer homeschooling. I'm doing a big clear out. I'm selling loads of books, and I'm selling the home education series. And I found one with your surname in. And
Wow.
I know. And I was like, what? She said, one of the volume 1 says Boden. I don't know any of the Bodens. I can't think of any of the Bodens. None of the other books do. And so I said, send me a picture of them. Send me a picture of the writing. And straight away, I was like, that's my original copy from the early 2000s. I was like, I will buy them from you. And she gave me an amazing, in fact, we together, we were like working out like what is a good price. And she was like, I don't even want that. I just want you to have them. And so these have been back on my shelf only for a few weeks. And I'm sort of not had a chance to tell many people that story, but I've got loads of the other different types that are available now. I always look at them for research purposes, like how they're set out, and lots of people are reproducing them in a beautiful way. But there's nothing quite like the first copies that helped establish, what I do today.
Yeah, so, isn't it wild? Because people ask me that too, like, how did you go into what you're doing? And it wasn't a direct arrow for me. So this is kind of a discussion on the motherhood section you're speaking to in your book. But there's really, you follow your own passions. You allow yourself to go into deep dives, as they say, into certain zones, and then it clarifies with your values and how you want to spend your time and all the things that you're actually trying to do for your children too. And then you become the Charlotte Mason queen. What shall we call you?
What about that?
Right? Especially if you're British.
Yes. Chin up. Yeah, I think I love the story, and a journey is never straight, is it? It's never just one single path without any rocks along and bumps along the road. And I think there are some things that I know that from the very early days, there are some rhythms and values, I guess that will be a good word, that I set in place. And one of those was about my continual learning, that I didn't just want to ride this with somebody else's curriculum or somebody else's ideas, happy to be inspired by that, happy to learn from those. But it was really important to me that I walked this journey on my own revelation, on my own learning, on my own discovery. And that's why it takes time, it takes time to really fully understand what her principles mean to you. So millions of people can explain them to you, but actually it's not until you see them come to life in your children, in your household, in your own life. That's why, that's when I could actually write about it. That's why I can actually now come up with analogies and ideas and language, modern language around this, because I've spent the last, 17 years reading and researching. So it doesn't come easily, and it's not a straight road, but the rich, deep work is always worth it. It really is.
In the beginning, you don't always know where you're going with something. I know it's a rite of passage for homeschool moms to ask the question, like, is this good enough? Like, am I doing the right thing here? And you can hear us say, yeah, just keep going. But it's almost like a rite of passage. You have to do the deep dive. But I know, two things I'm thinking right now is, one, I think you're an independent soul outside of this. That's my guess. Right. And so was I. Just didn't realize how independent until I kept making those choices. And then the other thing is that you're talking to someone who's perimenopausal and just forgot what you said.
Yeah, I am with you. I wish I could collect the word for you. I am in the exact same stage.
Oh, yeah, I know we are. Well, I should say us too.
Isn't it bad? I wish you could kind of fish them back in. Like, where did that word go?
No, actually, I've got it. Is that a lot of people are drawn to me from the unschooling world or self-directed learning world. And the truth is that I am there. And So I'm like everywhere else too, though. Um,
Yeah.
I would actually show you this book. This book accompanies my every conversation. It's the one, I have to remember the name, The Well-Trained Mind. And
Yeah. Yeah.
every day I've learned so much from classical homeschooling and how to engage different educational bits. But now it props up my computer when I chat with someone. So, I, but I find everything that I've learned along the way has informed how I think about what an education is anyway.
Absolutely.
But when I speak with homeschool parents, it doesn't matter to me how you homeschool. Like you decide whatever is important or valuable to you, because I know as a mother of children, I can't convince you just because I believe something to be true. Turns out they don't necessarily agree with you just because you think a certain way.
It's true.
It's true. Just have a
Yeah.
teenager, 2 or 4. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then the other thing is that I don't think that was what the intention was for us to make them know certain things. But anyways, I'll stop there and just say, hey, so when I hear you engage a discussion on what an education is anyway, you are very much going down that path of exploring from an individual family's values how to
Yeah.
approach an education. And it isn't just a carte blanche, here's what you should do.
Not at all. And I'm similar to you in the sense of not so much classical. I haven't really gone down that road, even though a lot of people would say there's a lot of crossover with Charlotte
There
Mason.
is a
And
lot.
I've read Karen Glass's book, Consider This. Fantastic. Highly recommend that. So I do have an understanding, but my practice probably holds hands a lot more with the unschooling method of education.
Right.
And I've had lots of conversations with unschoolers. I've got tons of friends who are unschoolers who are intentional, brilliant, vibrant homeschool families who are basically just led by the interests of their children, but then they resource them wherever they're going. And they're so fun to see. And I think the difference for us, for our family, is that I was so convinced, I guess, kind of wooed by the ideas of the Charlotte Mason philosophy, her ideas around literature and music and art and nature, that I think that even if our children are not naturally being directed in that way, we can open up a wide door and make those things available to them and make those things appealing and rich and delightful and invite them in. So if I am not a Charlotte Mason home educator who will push our way through a book, even if people are crying or it's boring and we're just dreading it, I'm like, no way. Whereas some people would approach their plan for education as immovable, like we will get through this, we will like it eventually. And I'm not like that. My personality doesn't warm well to that, and that's not what I believe about childhood or education. That when Charlotte Mason says education is for delight, she said the sole end of education is growth. Is boredom a sign of growth? No. Is crying over a tedious task, is that growth? Well, I mean, you can learn lessons from trying and doing stuff, but no. And so she also said it's not about how much a child knows, it's about how much they care. So care, growth, delight, all those words for me have to add up to the choices that we make and what we facilitate and what we make available for our children. So I plan, I create a format, but there's freedom within the format. And also additional to all that, I do listen to my children because they are born persons, and I do observe them. And if they have a particular interest, a path that they want to walk on, another door they want to open, that's maybe not natural to me or not something I know about, then I help them resource that, and we'll talk about it and look at how can we learn this together. So, and that's great. And I also think that's very much life, isn't it? Like nowadays we're thinking, I want to learn to crochet. You just go on YouTube, don't you?
Never done it, not crocheting.
No, I can't do it. My brain isn't wired that way, but I've tried. My friend, bless her, my friend has tried and tried, but no, it doesn't work.
No,
So yeah, I am a big fan. I'm a big fan of resourcing children's interests and direction, but also creating an intentional format for them to flow in and for them to move in, and see how wonderful the world of literature,
Mm.
etc. is. Because I do think it is.
Yeah, there's so many things that you just said. I'm like, do all over
I
the place.
know.
I had a moment with my son who's doing a writing project, and he's not with me, but he said, "Can I? You think I can just use Chat GPT?" And I'm like, "Well, probably not officially," but so I thought it was interesting. In the beginning, he's my youngest. In the beginning of my homeschool years, if Chat GPT existed, I would have
Mm,
said, "No, that's not classical literature. You can't use that kind of stuff." But now I'm like, let's just play with it for fun. And
yeah.
so he just, he said, "I'd like a 10-line iambic pentameter of what it's like to be Canadian." And then it came up with something clever that included maple syrup and Tim Hortons, of course.
Of course.
I don't like Tim Hortons, by the way, just to be clear. But I was impressed at the playfulness of it. And
Mm,
if it's an assignment that has genuine expectations to write poetry, well, I don't think we should be going to Chat GPT, but it's just learning, it's just
yeah.
exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think it's fun. I think definitely, give it a go. I think further and higher educational institutions have got their work cut out for them, like they're going to have to, I mean, they are already creating plagiarism software to kind of check all this, and some are saying, hey, well, aspects of it are okay. I think what we want to do is tap into the root creativity in a child
right.
and
Yeah,
continue to draw out ideas from them. And Charlotte Mason said those ideas come from stories, from
yeah,
nature, from looking at art, from listening to music, from having room to think. And I that's true, isn't it? Like I could go on to Chat GPT and type in write a nature poem about a park, and it may sound very similar to what I'm looking at every day. Or I go for a walk in the park, feel inspired, feel the wind on my face, come home and write my experience. Who
yeah.
benefits from that? Me. Like I benefit because I've got it out of myself. And I think that's what I hope that we can cling on to and help children understand, is that, well, humans understand, is that really needs, the authenticity of creativity comes from ideas which are inspired from things all around us, from living a wide and varied life.
Yeah, that is what I love of the Charlotte Mason method. I hear a natural, just like you, overlay between Charlotte Mason and classical homeschooling,
Yeah.
because they focus on similar things, but then also unschooling in Charlotte Mason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, like
Yeah.
narration. Narration is just really a clever tool to process and memorize
So
concepts.
brilliant.
And, in the beginning days for me, homeschooling, I would assume that, well, the way I was taught in a conventional school, if I knew that my child learned, it was because they filled in a worksheet or they wrote a paragraph about what they learned. And I did do that, by the way, with my homeschooling approach at the time. My 8-year-old doing a full page of dictation. At
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
after an hour of reading. Yeah, I was hardcore. I was hardcore. Maybe it was a couple pages, but that didn't last long and it didn't work. And I don't think it actually helped them really process it. Just having a conversation alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think we do learn from those early years, don't we? There are things that my poor guinea pig, older kids who
Always.
are now adult children, adults. Yeah, we have these conversations sometimes, and I'm like, I'm so sorry I made you do that. Like my daughter, I've got this image of my daughter crying over nature journaling and me realizing she doesn't process this way, and now in her 20s, recognizing her brain doesn't work that way. No wonder
Yeah.
she just couldn't, look at that bird, now draw it. It doesn't work. And fortunately, I didn't understand it in depth, but I caught on to something in the early years. And I introduced things like tracing paper and carbon paper to try and build her confidence, and
Yeah.
just, you know, interrupted that breakdown of connection and tried to help her confidence, which helped a lot. And I've shared that tip with lots of parents, and lots of people have used that. But yeah, all our kids are so different, and we have to
They are
understand,
different.
we
Yeah.
have to understand, you know, neurodiversity. Like, we may not have children who are they may not have diagnoses, they may not have strong symptoms and stuff, but actually they're all so different. And I think being an observer of our children, being acutely aware of patterns of behavior or patterns of disconnect in their work, whether it's numbers, writing, whatever it is, you have to take note of that and kind of go, okay, how do I remove a barrier and create a connection? And
Yeah.
that might not be in any book. It may not be something somebody else is teaching. That has to come from our maternal creativity, often our intuition.
Yeah.
And I tapped into a lot of that. Like, how can I figure this out for my child, you know, with what I have? And we got there with lots of them, just with different things I was spotting that were pressures to them, you know, kind of feeling the pressure of simple things. One child would be racing away and writing, and another one would be like in a corner. I don't want to do this.
Yes.
Like, oh my goodness. And that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that we get to observe it, we get to attend to it. Whereas if our kids were dealing with that in a classroom, you know, they're just labeled, or
They are. And then they self-label.
yeah,
I think we need to ask ourselves, why are we wanting our children to write, or why do we want them to
right,
learn basic arithmetic? And
yeah,
ask yourself those questions, because then really look at the child that's in front of you. And then how do you make those things go together, those concepts?
yes.
Because they're very different. Every child is very different. And
Mm,
I think it's our own anxiety that gets
yeah,
us to, let's go, let's do this thing. We need to make
yeah,
sure that you've done this by a certain age. Yeah.
yeah. That is a huge thing, actually. Fear-driven homeschooling I come across it all the time. Just parents saying, you know, what if I'm not doing enough? What if they're behind? What about gaps? I don't know that. I'm just, whoa, let's just slow down there. Let's take
Yeah.
it back a notch.
Yeah.
Because and I love that Charlotte Mason said parents need to trust themselves more.
Yeah.
And I repeat that time and time again, like, believe in yourself. And if you've chosen to be at home with your children, then use what you have, what you know, what you're capable of, and, you know, help facilitate that with your children. And then they will go on to do that for themselves. I just think that we can be so, you know, damning of our own intellect and our own capabilities. But if you know it's right to have your children at home, you've got what it takes. I really think mothers do. And we do have to trust ourselves.
Yeah, it comes down to trust every time.
Yep.
So I did obviously a deeper dive into unschooling than Charlotte Mason, because when I think of trust, I think of the unschool philosophy, but
Yes. Yeah.
you were speaking to, these are literally her words. That's her goal, is to trust your
Yeah.
child.
Yep.
But it also, just like I speak a lot about how we address our big emotions, and we can't emotionally regulate as moms if we don't know how to, or we don't know how to help our kids do it if we don't know how to do it for ourselves.
Right.
I think the same is true for trust. We can't trust our kids if we don't have a sense of, I'll trust what my instinct is or my intuition is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important. And sometimes you have to revisit it every day, don't you?
Yeah, not
And just,
anymore. If I'm honest, I'm like, I don't actually care what other people think, and I'm not just
no,
saying that.
absolutely. And I think that's some of the beauty of getting older. Like,
Yeah,
you know, I just think I've let go of a lot of that stuff and just kind of flung it off. And I talk to a lot of younger mums who they've got to do their own journey. We can't do it for them. But I
yeah,
think they can learn from some of those things. And I really hope they get it quicker than I did.
yeah,
Like, come on, just trust
yeah,
yourself. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't play the comparison game. You'll
yeah,
be so much freer.
yeah.
Um, And there's a few mums that I'm kind of mentoring at the moment who are a lot younger than me, and their children are very young. And it's actually a real joy watching them get hold of some of this stuff early and run with it and be free in it. And I'm like, man, you're going to be, watch you go in 10 years time. If you can take that and just keep going, it's good news for home education. If those are the people who are going to be the leaders and spokespersons.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for the world to have people
So
that
good.
energize
So
like
good.
that. Yeah.
Right. And what it teaches our children.
Yeah.
So powerful. Yeah.
And there was, I don't remember where it was in your book, but you have these Mason moments.
Yes, at the end of every chapter. Yeah.
There was one section where you were talking about encouraging independence, and the way you said it is different than I say it, but that idea of just get out of their way.
Yeah.
Like let them just be.
Yeah, and that's a Charlotte Mason concept as well, which I've obviously reworded for myself, but she calls it masterly inactivity. So getting out of the way, but being fully aware of what's going on. So you can, give them a great book, but you've chosen it really well, but you leave them to read it. Or you're going out in nature, but you know exactly why you've picked this area, and you know what's around that corner, but you let them go and find it for themselves. So it's almost kind of being intentional, being thoughtful, being present, like bringing security to a child. So they know you're there, but just completely leaving them to connect with whatever they can themselves. But yeah, just leave them on their own, just leave them to learn, leave them to connect. That's where the real work takes place.
Yeah. I think my kids are prolific cooks because I did that in the kitchen. Initially, when I was in the kitchen, I was just, okay, no, don't do it that way. No, we only want a certain amount of baking soda. Oh, no, don't grab more dishes. We don't want to wash up all the dishes. I was in control mode.
Yeah.
So I realized that if they're going to learn how to do this, I better just leave.
Yeah.
Too much baking soda only happens once.
Well, and we all learn from our mistakes. And I'm constantly saying that. I've been saying that for years to my children when they make math mistakes or they make just any kind of errors in their academics. Like, well, that's great. Now we learn from that. And that's okay. If you're getting 100% all the time at everything, we've got a problem here. We need to be growing and learning. So yeah, I think it's the same in the kitchen, unless it causes a fire, and then we've got a problem.
Yes, that's true. That's only me. If
I was listening, and me. I was listening to a story on a podcast. Somebody was talking about their child who had got some kind of assignment from school, and anyway, she was making a cake, and she was insistent that she didn't need her mum's help, and her mum kept saying, "Remember to read. Is it teaspoon or tablespoon?" Da, 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 da. Anyway, what happened was she's making a chocolate cake, and I think it said a teaspoon and a half of baking soda, and she put a cup and a half in. And apparently, so mum was in her office working, dad's in the kitchen. Dad says it looks fine because mix it in. It's like with the flour, and he says and he says something like, "As long as it's done with love, it's fine."
It is, just no one's eating it.
Yeah. So then mom comes back in the kitchen, she discovers this, and this chocolate cake looks like a molten lava volcano. It's kind of bubbling over, it's going all over the bottom of the oven. She's like, no. Baking soda, but they made it into a science experiment, so that's great. They learned from it, and she will never do that again, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Or she will, but it'll be on purpose.
Oh, she will, in her own home when she's older.
This discussion of, I actually learned that this is still happening. People are still asking homeschool parents about socialization. And the way you wrote about it in your book just made me laugh, because I forget what you said. Well, I guess I had to answer a different question. That was also one that I hear a lot, that I'm like, okay, here we go. But the S question, I'm like, please no, make it stop.
Yes. It's so exhausting, isn't it? And actually, I tend to get it from, I do get it from people who've got their kids in school, but I often get it from random people, like a supermarket assistant or the
Yes.
dental receptionist or something. And I'm like, really? Is that? And I remember being in the dentist. I don't think I wrote about, I'm not sure if I wrote about this in the book, I can't remember, but I remember being in the dentist with one of my children, and we happened to go during the day and
Yeah.
not after 3 o'clock or whatever. And so the typical question, oh, you're not in school today? And and because my son had like hands in his mouth, I was answering. I was like, oh, we home educate. And then the first thing out of the assistant's mouth, this girl was, is that legal? And I burst out laughing, and which my kids were really embarrassed about.
Yeah.
They thought I was being rude, but I was like, why would I be in the dentist why would I admit to you that something's illegal? No, it's not illegal. And I was so frustrated with her. I almost wanted to take my children and walk out. I'm like, what a ridiculous question. And I realized I probably embarrassed her a little bit. And I was like, look, it's completely legal. It's a huge movement. Loads of people are doing it. And and then they ask me things like, what about PE, like physical education? And what about, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so small-minded. But it's because you've never tapped into it. You've never had that conversation before.
Don't know anything from
I just don't know.
Yeah, except there is a disconnect, because I remember having a conversation where people were like, wow, your kids really talk to each other kindly, which by the way doesn't always happen, but and they look out for each other, and they're like, so they can talk with adults, but how do you deal with homeschool socialization? And I'm like,
what?
Did you just hear what you said? But
I know. And I'm like, oh, so the way to socialize children is to put them all in a room with people their own age
and 20
all day.
people. Yeah.
Well, in England, it's like 34. In some classes here, it's 34 children, all the same age. I mean, what is this? Like, that is not socialization.
No, but you're not allowed to talk either, just so you know.
And you have to put your hand up to go to the toilet, and you can't eat when you want. I mean, how is that? So so I'm trying to remember what I said in the book, but I often say to people, what do you do for a job? Oh, I work in an office. Okay, how old are you? I'm 37. Is everybody in your office 37? That, of course not. I'm like, and you socialize? Yes. Okay. So eventually you do your life with people of all different ages, and they're like, ah. So it's frustrating, and it is. I'm pretty chill about talking about home education, and just, this is our life. And I don't normally, as a rule, I'm okay with being out and about of the house in school time.
Yeah, me too.
But occasionally I'll be booking appointments, and I'm like, oh, after 3 o'clock, maybe I'll have less questions if I do that. But this, for some reason, for a while, the socialization question was like a red rag to a bull. The kids would be like, oh, brace yourself.
Yeah, my kids actually, like, I never cared when I went out. I don't know, I just seized the John Taylor Gatto energy right from the get-go. But I was very much okay, well, this is an opportunity to talk about it. But my kids gradually were like, can we find a way to avoid these questions altogether?
I know, mine too. Yeah. I don't want to embarrass them. I want this to be if it is a delightful living and all that.
Enjoy their life.
We want to fight for it, don't we, as mothers? But our kids just want to do their life. So I mean, mine got like that after they were like, please don't say anything.
I think actually this is the biggest reason to homeschool, though, is that attachment or connection. The learning part is the easy part. And the reason I think, at least for me, like when I read your book, I'm like, oh, I can hear how your parents were, and your family just, I know there's a perfect family, but it's lovely. And that's not the background that I have. And so then I go, oh, I wish I had that. That would be ideal. And so then I wanted to create that in my own home. And that's beautiful. And also it came with a dissonance, because I didn't know how to be that way in my own home.
Because you hadn't had it patterned. That's right. Yeah.
So the connection for our conversation here is that I didn't know how to do that. And so then I had to learn that within my home, but I could definitely not have created that connection or attachment if they had been at school. Then I wouldn't have had opportunity to learn all those things and
Yeah,
then really be with them. And I don't, it doesn't matter if there's a challenging family background or not. I think
mhm.
it's enabling connection when you have them with you, especially when,
Absolutely right.
yeah,
I think it's right. And we, we go into parenting being often having to reparent ourselves, don't we? And
yes,
even if we've had a great upbringing, there are things that I still had to undo and relearn
right.
and process.
Yeah,
And I think we all have to do that work. It is important. But yeah, we do, I think for some pet people, they are healing and undoing a lot of their childhood. And so they're recreating what those patterns look like. And we can only do as much as we can do. We can take the next step forward and read great books, bring great teachers around us or friends, and
I
learn from
believe
that.
we've been given the story that we've been given and we have to play it out. We have
That's
to do
right.
because
That's
I
right.
do think we really can influence a lot of what we're doing in our home, but we didn't decide where we were born in the world or what
No,
time or, many, many things. And
yeah.
we have to just choose to embrace it and grow. And yeah, that reminds me of this is kind of an indirect concept, but your story about Syrian cooking and the
Yeah.
word nafas.
Nafas. Yeah. I
Nafas?
mean, however, it's my British pronunciation, nafas. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is kind of, yeah, breath. As somebody told me, they understood it as being like spirit, but it is this kind of inner, which is so, I remember reading about it, thinking, yeah, this is, and it was talking about the home cooks, not the chefs, not the kind of Michelin star chefs, but it was the home cooks, the people who just the kind of reality down to earth, providing food for their families, but there was something in it that they brought themselves to it and not just the ingredients. And
Yeah.
I think that's, if we can do that with home education, it's not just the math, writing, reading this book, doing some copy work, doing some dictation, but we actually embody those, without being weird, like embody the principles because of our learning, because of our own reading and our own work. It kind of flows out of us when we are spending time with our children. And even if it's just a little short lesson, there's something of a passion that comes from us, which I think is like this nafas. Whereas this is for me, I mean, this really kind of works with my personality. I'm a little bit more leaning on like a more of a bohemian side of I like to be a little bit freer and open with things and move, rather than being constricted and being told what to do. And that's why I've never purchased a big curriculum or anything like that, because I knew this is not good. I'll do it for 3 days and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
I want to change it up.
Yeah.
And there are lots of people like me. I meet people like that all the time. And then I also meet people and coach people who say, I just need some scaffolding. I just need something built up, and then I can find my house within that. And that's important too. And
Yeah.
so
It
I'm thankful. I'm really grateful for people who write curriculum and write plans and pull book lists together. I think it's really important. But I also think that those are fellow mamas who are like me. You don't have to feel guilty for not prescribing to the recipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I can't encourage a specific thing. It
no,
feels disingenuous for me.
absolutely. Yeah. And so this is why, again, going back to our the last thing we were talking about, you've got to know yourself, don't you? You have
Yeah.
to know yourself.
Self-awareness. Would you
Yeah.
say that's the biggest thing then in your motherhood chapter that you
I
would want?
think it's a big part. I mean, I talk about just doing the work, caring for that your inner life and making. And Charlotte Mason wasn't a mother, but she was, again, many years observing mothers and worked with mothers, and she brought it down to this very simple thing of, maybe if you just did for yourself what you do for your
Yeah.
children, we'd be
Yeah.
much happier. And so she did, and when I break it down in the chapter, in the play chapter, I think it is,
Yeah.
Such simple suggestions that don't cost anything really, purchase, the cost of a book or whatever. But she'll say things like, take a nap without the children, go for a walk in nature by yourself, or just take a minute in the garden.
Yeah.
Take some time to read, look at a piece of art, the things that we do with our children, actually seeing that as an important investment in ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to practice that. And I do more so than ever before. And it has kept my spirit alive.
Yeah.
And I know when to stop. I know when we need to pause. I know when myself or my children need a break.
Yeah.
But genuinely, that it all comes from just understanding that I am a key player in this. And I generally can set the tone in what happens in the house. I know children can do that as well.
They can.
Depending on how they wake up.
And also how they're born into the world, because certain personalities are like, whoa, really big. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But you can, and I think, but what do? You let those 10 minutes when they first wake up wreck the whole day? Or we can be an adult and be responsible for ourselves and our family, and we can make some small adjustments and change the plan if you need to.
Absolutely.
And I have to do it with a particular child without going into detail. I just kind of go, okay, what do you feel like you need today? How can I help you? Let's start the day in that way. And then when I start with kindness, it's not always easy. Start with kindness and gentleness and listening and nurturing. Then we end up generally getting back on path and we do some schoolwork together. Right. But those beginnings are a struggle at certain points.
Yeah.
And I just have to step back and recognize, don't react to this. This is not about you. Just
that is hard sometimes. It really, really is.
Take a few breaths. Yeah, it is hard. It is
hard, especially if you haven't healed a certain element, which, I mean, we're all in a process of healing. So you don't come to the end of now you're healed and you don't have any things to deal with. But you can identify when you have something to deal with because you're repeatedly triggered by the same thing.
Absolutely.
And it's so hard not to be, honestly, for a certain period of time until you finally realize, what's going on here? Why am I reacting to this thing? And then be proactive, get curious in yourself and just ask yourself, what is the thing? Why is the way he's saying it or she's saying it? You feel a certain way.
As most of your audience female, is it all mums?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say a big piece of work that personal journey that I've been going on for myself and my daughters over the past 2 years particularly is really looking at the power of the female cycle and
me too.
So what happens over each week, looking at that hormonal different, like looking at what their needs are, what our needs are, how that affects learning, how that affects attention, how that affects energy, and I'm still on it. I'm still reading, I'm still doing it. But I would highly recommend, if you've got daughters, or even, if you've got the energy, teach your sons so that they can be great partners and husbands or whatever. But my initial point is to do that for myself and my daughters, and having compassion for that, recognizing, and also that it's it's also an amazing, powerful thing to understand. Okay, this week this is what's going on in my hormones, which means I can probably do an awesome project. Like I can take on something.
Productive.
So productive. And then there's another week where I'm like, okay. And sometimes it all comes at all three of us at once. And we're like, okay, we need hot water bottles and we need some hot chocolate and we need blankets and we're going to read books. And I think that is cool. If mums can grasp this stuff and for ourselves and for our girls, I didn't know anything of this. I just did not know. I just was told it hurts a bit and this is what you use. And it's great because it means you can have babies. And so
in itself, but anyway,
exactly. So am so on a journey of just like, I want to learn about this as much as I can so that I can empower my girls to live their life fully, but also be kind to themselves when they need to be kind. And I was listening to I listen to podcasts a lot when I'm like doing housework and stuff, but I was listening to a podcast today with a lady who was talking about this. She was actually talking about it in conjunction with fasting. I think it was intermittent. Anyway, it was good. I'm not particularly all there yet, but she was talking about hormones and that kind of stuff. And she said how oh, you see, had one of those moments now. It's gone.
All right.
It's gone.
Cycling.
Somewhere up here, something she said. But anyway, she was brilliant and talking about this knowledge. And also, you know, she was wanting to communicate with general practitioners, with doctors, with brothers, husbands. And she's like, everyone needs to understand. Oh, I know what she was. I've got it. It's come back.
Yeah.
She said, I think it may be in Spain, and I need to verify this, so don't quote me on it. I think she said in Spain, they have now introduced into the workforce or into the, I don't know if it's like a general national thing, but all women get 3 days menstrual leave a month.
Wow. That
if
is,
they want to take it.
Wow.
No questions asked.
Wow.
So what I'll have to do, I'll have to verify that, and I'll let you know, because if that's true, I mean, that is progressive, isn't it? That's just like,
I think the world is growing in consciousness around certain things, because I know when there was nothing. Here's a tampon, here's Kotex, you go and don't wear white pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But when, you know, it's transitioned into such a way that we're actually aware of our need for comfort, but I remember writing a post about this, like way back in the day. As soon as I started homeschooling, I started blogging. So I did write about homeschool moms taking PMS days. You know how teachers take PD days? We legit should be taking PMS days, because our tolerance levels for nonsense, I mean, it's just like off the charts, which might be useful at times, but it's also not useful for relationships. So it's really important.
And I think all the work around, I mean, you and I have just mentioned a few times, but the perimenopausal phase, which we never used to talk about. And I'm so glad that I am now in that phase when we are more educated and we can read books about this, and you're having these aha moments of, oh, that's why that's going on. And more, I think more, I can't remember what country all this kind of stuff is happening, but they're recognizing it more and seeing it as seeing they're kind of creating space for the conversation around perimenopausal women and their place in the workplace and what the support they need. And the thing is, when we're on it, when you know, I'm grasping it still, but when the hormones are aligning, when they're in the right place, we can tackle huge things. I mean, we can, you know, there are things that we're capable of that we can tap into in the right time. And so this doctor today on this podcast, this male doctor, was being interviewed by this female lady who was talking about hormones and cycles. And he said, so if women actually understood this, they could plan their schedule, their calendar of like social commitments, projects. They could kind of schedule it around it. And she's like, yes, that's exactly what we want. And I've started to do it that way with, you know, any kind of writing projects and things. So anyway, that's kind of a bit of a sideline, but I think homeschool mums, because we're around our children 24/7, I think it's important to just equip ourselves with this knowledge, help our girls with this, and the whole family, really. But then definitely
a really big communal red tent. That's what I would like. I would like just sit there for a week and somebody can homeschool the kids, or they can.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I really would. I would love that. Yeah.
You could start that. That's your idea. Your little entrepreneurial tent.
You know what? I have so many things. Like I went through your book again. Okay, this is how much I love your book. And I wrote
Oh,
down notes on all of the different things that you said. And I am still on page one. So I,
oh, you are lovely. I'll
I
just have to come to Canada. We can do it for real.
also come back anytime. But
Thank
I
you.
have to say, sloppy joes, no, still no.
I
Need to,
think I have to be convinced. Somebody would have to. I've had a few people offer to make me them when I'm in the States, and a few people have offered to send recipes.
but it's
Um,
on bread.
I
Yeah.
need the idea. It's like loose meat on a roll. Like I just don't get it. I don't have the framework for that at all. And I'm sure there's a lot of British food that Americans and Canadians would be like, "You do what? That's gross." But I don't know.
To be straight, there is a cliche. I mean, you probably know, but that there isn't really good British food, right? This is the
I
stereotype.
I mean, there is a stereotype that we don't season particularly well. Yeah,
But I've been
I
to
mean,
London
I
and it had amazing Indian food. Like, hello.
yes, that's not English food, though, is it?
Right.
Yeah, we have amazing other we're very obviously there's so many cultures here. So if we go out to eat, we'll eat Middle Eastern, we'll eat Indian, we'll eat Lebanese, we'll eat India, we'll eat Thai, we'll eat Italian. So we've got the scope of that. It's incredible. But no, the traditional British food would be fish and chips,
Oh,
and
that's
mushy
good.
peas. Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's not it's pretty brown and bland. Like it's not bland, but it's beige food and it's like stodgy to us. It's like not something we have very often. But yeah, so no, I would go further afield for good food, but I mean there are plenty of incredible chefs in Great Britain, but they tend to be making recipes from all over, but we're not so
It's
much.
amazing. Yeah, I'm sure. And
Yeah, we
everyone
don't really have, apart from we're known for things like tea, aren't we, and stuff like that, and
crumpets,
Yorkshire puddings. Yorkshire puddings are good.
Yorkshire pudding. Yeah,
Yes.
my favorite. We always have that on Christmas. Always.
Yeah.
Now I know how to make them. It only took 10 years. um, oh, girl, I think I just want to keep going and I don't want
I
to,
know.
but I very much appreciate the things that you've shared and just sifting through all of the years of, going down the deep rabbit holes of Charlotte Mason and bringing it to life and making us actually see how it's relevant today, but not
Thank
just
you.
bringing it to life and making it relevant, but also there's so much life in the words. There's so much, not just life, there's like practical principles that we can use in
Mm.
homeschools. So I very much appreciate that you put it down on paper.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm it was such a privilege to write the book. I feel really grateful that I've been able to have that opportunity. And yeah, I hope your community get to engage with it and read it and just reach out if people have got questions. And yeah, hope to chat to you again. It's been
Absolutely.
lovely as always.
So what's your next project? I'd love to hear.
Well, my next writing publishing project is I can't really talk about it because it's in the works with publishers and we're negotiating deals and all that kind of stuff, but I will let you know as soon as I can. So that's all live at the moment. In fact, I've got a meeting this week, so that's all happening. But my live kind of community, I launched in January the Collective, which is the Modernist Mason members forum. First time I've done it. And it kind of was a way of bringing everything under one roof. So I do monthly workshops, I do a book club, I do a group coaching.
You're doing a book club too. I don't think I've ever.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
book
Yeah.
club. And then we do the coach house, which is a group coaching session. And then the final thing that we do, which is slightly different, but it's worked out brilliant, is called the Bronte room, which is a room for writers. So it's a co-working space or a co-creating space where we go live on Zoom and we have some music on, and then we use the Pomodoro technique. So we do 25 minutes with a timer, and then we take a break and then another 25 minutes. And I know really a deep work would be doing that 5 times, but I haven't got time to sit on Zoom for that long. So we do 2 sessions. And then after the second session, we either share what we've been working on or share about what we're working on. And it's just so wonderful. So we've got people writing novels, we've got people journaling, we've got people writing in their commonplace books, but a lot of people are actually writing chapters of books, and somebody else is writing a children's book. So we'll see what comes out of the Bronte room, but I'm excited from it. Yeah. So that's it's
So
it's
cool.
only it's $4.99 a month, so £4.99. So I guess that's like $6 or something.
$600 here.
It's just a handful of dollars. It's not much at all, because I wanted to make it really, manageable. And it's a growing global community over there, and there's a community page so people ask questions and chat to each other, and it's great. And I'm loving doing that. I'm loving having everybody and everything under one roof, and that's really what I'm working on alongside
Are you writing your book during that time, but then you can't tell people what it's about?
No, I haven't done that yet, actually. I'm trying to think. I've written some poetry during that time, which was lovely, and I've written some podcast scripts during that time as well. So I do use it to work, but always writing.
It's very cool.
It's so fun. It's a great time. I love it.
I want to know how I can support you and how we can work together again, because I mean, if I met you on the street, I would still be having tea with you. I'm certain of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, let's just I think I will keep you posted on what I'm doing, and I'm always keeping an eye on the things that you're doing. And I think just, I guess, sharing each other's stuff and seeing where we can connect. And but I appreciate your support. Oh, you're so good. And I just really appreciate your support and your enthusiasm for my work and the book. And you are very kind.
It's legit. It's a beautiful book. Thank you for being.
Thank you.
Up again soon.
Yes.
Girl.